What's up, guys, gals, and non binary pals? It is your girl, Alyssa, back at it again with another podcast episode. Um, if you didn't watch or listen to last week's episode, then you might not know this, but this is recorded right after that one. And yeah, in that one, I had a lot of energy and was like bouncing off the walls all over the place. But I've had a little mini break in between recording, and so now I'm a little bit more relaxed. My brain is still scattered all over the place, though. So, expect scatterbrainness again this episode. But, yeah, I am pre-recording this episode, so I won't be able to see any feedback and any comments on, if there are any, on the last episode. So I don't get to really bounce back and vibe off of what was said, sadly, a little bit for this episode. But anyway, so this week I wanted to kind of talk about a thought that I had, a thought process that I've had, and something that was brought to my attention a while back, and it hasn't left my mind since. So I figure, why not talk about it and like kind of dive into it, which the thought is like, what if, it's a what if type scenario, but like, have we ever considered like what would the story have been had Izuku remained quirkless, and just like how different of an impact that could have brought to the story? I don't know if you have, but I definitely have. So let's talk about it. Well, this isn't a let's talk about it segment, podcast episode, but that's something I do want to talk about this week is, what if Izuku stayed quirkless? Like, what would it look like? What would My Hero Academia look like? The impact of the story definitely would be different. I mean, like, we get the idea of like, okay, so this quirkless boy wants to be a hero, but you can't do it quirkless apparently, which I don't agree with, but that's besides the point. But he magically gets to meet the number one hero, and turns out the number one hero can pass on his quirk to somebody else, and so now he gets a quirk. And essentially I feel like the message is supposed to be like, you too can be a hero, especially with like the song from the fourth season, like the performance that they gave at the festival. But I feel like that message would be so much stronger. Like, anybody can be a hero, like you can be a hero too, if he had remained quirkless, like Deku could have been the first quirkless hero, and I would have been so here for that, because he would have proved everybody wrong who said that he couldn't be a hero because he didn't have a quirk. Like, anybody could be a hero, really, if you think about it. You just have to have the guts and the will to put your life on the line for somebody else, Like, you have to have the dedication and the want to help others and better society and to protect others. And Izuku has all of that, quirk or not. We see that when the whole sludge, slime, whatever villain attacks Katsuki, and he jumps in when all the heroes are just standing there, because even without a quirk, he was willing to help, and he's the kind of person who would jump in regardless. So the fact that like he doesn't remain quirkless, I feel like weakens the message a little bit, and it would have been so much stronger had he remained quirkless. But I get that they did that because a lot of story elements then would change. And yeah, so another thing about that too is like, he would definitely need a new mentor. Like, he wouldn't have, had he remained quirkless, that would require him not to have met All Might, or for him to have met All Might, but like All Might not come back to the kid, like come back to him and like be like, you know what, kid, you got spunk. I like that. You have the makings of becoming a hero. Turns out like I can give you my quirk, like that whole moment wouldn't have happened. And so like he would definitely need a new mentor. But I don't think he would have gotten a mentor until later on, like after the sports festival. and I'm gonna get into that here soon. I do have like notes written out for this episode. I am more organized for this episode than I have been in the past, just because of my scatterbrainness at the moment. I want to try to be a bit more prepared and better at trying to get these thoughts out for you guys, because I do feel like this is like a big topic, or could be at the very least something that like we all think about or consider, like just how much of an impact and change in the different story that we could have had. Like, it still could have been My Hero Academia, but it wouldn't have been like, oh, him in the hero course. It would have been more like him learning of ways in which he could become a quirkless hero, and just how, like, his Hero Academia, in the sense of like how he too can be a hero even with being quirkless. I don't know if that's making any sense, but like it makes sense in my brain, so bear with me. But yeah, so obviously the first step of like his Hero Academia, Izuku's Hero Academia, would be him getting into UA. Now, do I think this fool would have been able to manage to get into the hero course without a quirk? No, sadly not. Like, granted, I'm sure his written exam scores would have been off the charts, as I had brought up in the last podcast episode, but he literally made it into the hero course simply because he saved Uraraka from that 0-pointer. But without One For All, he wouldn't have been able to do that unless he like went in there and like managed to get her unstuck and got them both to safety before the robot stepped on them. But I highly doubt that would have been possible. I'm sure like Ida would have probably came in and like zoomed in, grabbed her, and grabbed them both and then left. But yeah, so I definitely think that had Izuku like still try to get into UA, I think he would have gotten into the general course, or maybe even the support course, you know, since he like knows so much about different heroes and quirks and how they work, and just his ability to analyze things and make game plans and put them into action type stuff. Like, I genuinely feel like he could have been a support student, even though we don't really see him tinker around too much with actual like support gear and stuff, unless it's like Hatsume like changing up his costume and stuff, or like him just saying like what he wants and then her putting it into like actual things. So I feel like he more than likely would have ended up in the general course, and then we would have had like another Shinzo moment of like a general course student trying to make it into the hero course. Which, speaking of Shinzo, I feel like, or Shinzo, however you want to pronounce his name, I feel like them two we would have met Shinzo so much earlier and had so many more moments with like Shinzo and Deku. Like, I just feel like they very much would have become best friends because of the shared goal of like wanting to be heroes, and like being told they couldn't be, they would have bonded over that. And Izuku would have gave Shinzo so much more confidence in himself and his quirk so much earlier on, by like being himself, with being fascinated by quirks and going, oh my god, like you have a brainwashing quirk, like that's so cool, that could be used, so like it's so helpful with being a hero, like that could be used for so many good things, you know. And then Shinzo would have had that moment of like, wow, like someone actually sees me as a potential hero and not just a person with a villain's quirk. And they would have been best friends, and I would have been so here for that because we would have had more Shinzo content. Sadly, we wouldn't have had like the class 1A that we love and all that, but I would have been so here for that. Like, just watching Shinzo and Izuku's friendship blossom. And I feel like Hatsume honestly would be in that friend group as well, because I feel like Izuku and Hatsume would just bond over their like Izuku's ability to like analyze people's quirks would help Hatsume make her babies or whatever, and like I feel like they could bounce ideas off of each other, honestly, in that aspect. So I could see them being friends as well. And like, Honestly, now that I think about it, I'm kind of curious what the general course like studies look like at UA, and that would have been interesting to see. Can someone just write this like a spin-off of My Hero Academia? Like I've seen, I mean, if you're in any fandom and like a dedicated fan in the fandom, you're gonna come across fan fiction. So like I've seen that people have written like Quirkless, Deku, uh, AUs, all U's. I say all U's. I know it's pronounced AUs, but like because my mind processes the A as being alternate, it goes all U's anyway. But that's besides the point. But I have seen that people have like wrote that or like kind of like hypothesized on that, like what it would mean if Deku was quirkless. But yeah, I forget how I even got there on that thought process. But yeah, I just feel like he definitely would have been like a general course student and try to get into the hero course, which which I'm like looking at my notes that I wrote down here, which he could have probably done after the sports festival, kind of like Shinzo, because I mean, did like that first round, if you remember and think about it, that first round, Izuku did not use his quirk. He did not use one for all at all. And he placed first. And that's the kind of thinking that like would have helped him too. And that like if he was a general studies student and like he got to the sports festival, he would have probably still had that same game plan in place where he's like, okay, like I don't have a quirk and I'm going to have to deal with this. Granted, he probably would have gotten stuck in Todoroki's whole like freeze trap at the beginning because he wouldn't have known Todoroki and wouldn't have expected that beforehand. But I could definitely see him like even then like using the same, methods that he did, and he placed first. And that would have shocked everybody in the stadium, like, whoa, like this kid's quirkless and he placed first. He did all that without a quirk. What? Like, just like I'm telling you, the impact that it would have on the story if he remained quirkless, and just the shock that everybody like had. And it's like, wow, this kid's really smart. Like he could be of use in the like on the hero field or whatever and stuff. And then although like when you think about it, it's like if he doesn't have his quirk, then we don't get the iconic like secret love child moment. But yeah. He like I don't know, there's like so many moments that we wouldn't get, which is sad to think about in retrospect, about like what like the just his funny moments with members of class 1A and stuff like that. But I could definitely like just see him, especially in the sports festival, like analyzing the class 1A's quirk, because he definitely would have heard about the USJ incident and all that, being a UA student. And he's like, okay, well, I kind of have an idea about these students. Also, too, like, he definitely would have already known that Katsuki was in the UA Class 1A because, I mean, he's known him forever, and he knew that he was trying to get into UA anyway. And so, like, I feel like would still have that admiration for Bakugo that he has. Which, speaking of Bakugo, I feel like he definitely would be very much annoyed, especially at the sports festival, to see Deku there. And, like, I feel like he wouldn't be surprised that he's, like, a general course student. But, like, I could definitely see, like, Izuku saying something along the lines, like, I'm going to get into the hero course. I'm going to prove my worth. Like, I still want to be a hero. And I can see Bakugo being annoyed with him about it. But, like, secretly, at the same time, having, like, some admiration towards Deku's dedication and, like, want to get into the hero course. Like, I could definitely see that. But he obviously wouldn't show that because it's Bakugo. Like, we know that this fool will not let Izuku know that he genuinely, like, is rooting for him. But, yeah, so... yeah, but speaking of Izuku's, though, like, ability to, like, analyze quirks and all that, because I've been talking about that a lot, like, we know he has, like, all those notebooks full of, like, quirk analysis and whatnot, and I'm just like, are we sure that isn't a quirk within itself? Like, I just feel like that is, like if Deku was a hero with like a quirkless quote unquote hero, honestly, he would be the observant hero named Deku, because I feel like he still would use Deku as a hero name to like prove that he's not worthless. Like, the whole purpose of him using it now in the series is like, this name was used to like tear me down, and like it means worthless and all that, but it shows that I'm not worthless. But maybe, yeah, could probably think better when it comes to jumping into situations, but at the end of the day, I'm going to do it because someone's got to do it, Like how his name means now. I feel like he still would keep that name even if he was like a quirkless hero, to kind of prove like, yeah, I'm quirkless and people see that as worthless, but yet here I am, like I'm still a hero. I still did it. And just the satisfaction too that you get from proving people wrong who like doubted you, which I've recently got to do myself. So like I know that feeling, and I could just see the smile on his face. He's like, I did it, And anyway, so I could definitely see him being like the observant hero Deku. And even though like he's quirkless, I feel like his quirk, quote unquote, would be analysis, which is the ability to analyze anyone's quirk within a matter of seconds, minutes, whatever, like quickly. And the only like drawback or side effect of his quote unquote quirk would be his mumbling, which can be like annoying to some at times, but hey, it helps him get all the analysis out, which could be used in so many ways. Like we see him analyze heroes, but think about it, he could analyze villains' quirks too, and like use that to their advantage as heroes. Like he could help them plot out like their next moves, what they think the villain's next moves are going to be, and work that into their advantage. And because he knows how their quirks work and how all that is, like he'd be able to come up with a plan that's like best suited for defending against them, and what to expect and what quirks work best against the villain's quirks and whatnot. Like there's just so many possibilities there. It's like he does not need a quirk, honestly, in my opinion, to be a good hero, especially like not with his abilities now. Except the world that they live in makes it seem like you can't be a hero without one, which is sad. Or like, yeah, just the way UA's whole thing is set up in general to get into the hero course is kind of like rigged if you really think about it. Because I mean, like Shinzo, I was talking about him like earlier, like he has a strong quirk that could be used to the hero's advantage in a hero setting, and yet because the test is set to essentially the practical test, not the written one, but it's essentially set up to only really benefit those who have physical type quirks, or have strong like combative skills. Like that's not fair, because there are strong quirks that don't necessarily work against those type of things, like those robots, like Aizawa, for example. Which, speaking of Aizawa, I feel like after the sports festival, like he would take on both Izuku and Shinzo. Like we already see him take on Shinzo as a personal student, essentially. I mean, I guess spoilers if you're not caught up on season 5, but like that's literally the consensus that you get from the second episode, when I think it's the second episode, when Deku and All Might are leaving the office and they see Shinzo and Aizawa together, and it's really because like Aizawa's his teacher, teaching him how to use the capture weapon that Aizawa uses, which I can see both Deku and Shinzo in this quirkless world that I am creating, I guess, in my mind, or on for this episode. Like they would both utilize a capture weapon, and like Aizawa would teach them both how to essentially fight quirkless, because that's essentially what Aizawa does if you really consider it. I mean, I kind of brought this up in the last episode, so this podcast episode in a way is an extension of the last, but just focusing on like what would be the outcome if Izuku never got into this UA hero course because he remained quirkless, you know? But yeah, no. So I definitely think that Aizawa would be his new mentor rather than All Might in this scenario. And then I guess too, if you really think about it, then that would mean that All Might would have probably passed down his quirk to Mirio, like Night Eye had hoped for and essentially planned. I don't know. It's now like that's a whole nother thing. Is like who would have ended up with One for All had it not been for Izuku. And I almost said something and that's why I paused for a little bit, because I almost spilled some beans on manga spoilers, but I don't want to have spoilers in this episode because it's really not necessary. So I will refrain from saying what I wanted to say, but if you know, you know that Izuku being quirkless is, yeah. Anyway, I don't want to get too much into that because I feel like even the hint is a spoiler. But okay, now that I realize, I feel like that hint, the small hint that I gave, kind of made it seem like Izuku loses his quirk, and I promise you that's not it. That's not what happens. That has nothing to do. No, everything is fine. Well, everything is fine enough. Anyway, I'm trying to think because I had other things I wanted to say, and I think I like got lost all over the place while trying to trying to think. Aizawa. Oh yeah, I was talking about Aizawa. I was like, what was I talking about? That like I got a little sidetracked from Aizawa essentially fighting Quirkless, but yeah, that's just, I mean, he does. If he can't erase a quirk or there's no quirk to erase, like, I mean, he's essentially fighting Quirkless. So it would make sense for Aizawa to become his mentor rather than All Might. Or anybody else essentially that's like that can't rely on a quirk too much, you know? Or then too, I had seen a TikTok and like, honestly, I could see this happening, but like, if Izuku remained quirkless, like, and he couldn't get into the hero course, like even after the sports festival where he showed his like, his wits and his smarts and like how handy he could be in a hero setting, and like they still don't make him a hero or like allow him to go into the hero course, I could definitely see him like becoming a vigilante of sorts, because you just know Izuku would not give up on his dream of being a hero. Like, I don't see it happening, quirkless or not. Like, I really don't see him giving up on that. So I could definitely see him trying to become a vigilante of sorts, which would be interesting, like a quirkless vigilante. If I guess kind of spoilers for vigilantes, but it's like not even, I don't think it's, some of it's canon, but not all of it, but you don't really have to read it anyway to understand the storyline, but there is a quirkless vigilante in the spin-off Vigilantes, so I'm like, that would honestly be Izuku, but I mean, there's a loophole there, because you know Izuku's smart, so he would find loopholes in this, but if he was quirkless, like I could definitely see him being a vigilante, and then like if he ran into any pro heroes or like any of his friends that he made, because I feel like he definitely would find a way to become friends with Class 1A members, especially after the sports festival. Like I could see, him up interacting with some of the students after like the first round, and like because he's, he places first in the first round, then I could see like some students being like, this kid's really smart, he doesn't even have a quirk, like I want to be his friend, or I want to work with him. And then also too, like the whole Hatsume team up makes sense then in my mind, because like I said, I feel like if he was quirkless and then like either a general studies student or a support course student, like he would be friends with Hatsume, so like that makes sense there. And yeah, but what was I going with this? I don't even know. Oh, him being this is what I mean by I'm scatterbrained. Like, I will ramble on and on about something else that stemmed from one thing, and then I forget what the initial topic was. But no, so I definitely can see him becoming a vigilante if he didn't get into the hero course or like manage to get his provisional license and all that, like eventually after like trying all 3 years of high school. And if he ran into like any of the class 1A students who are like sidekicks or pro heroes or whatever, or like any pro hero that like he knows, because I mean, he wouldn't personally know any of the pro heroes, I don't think, unless they were like teachers at UA, but he would definitely know of them because of like his analysis or whatnot. But if he ran into any pro heroes, he'd be like, "Oh, I'm not breaking any laws though. Like, I'm not using a quirk. I'm quirkless, and I'm just, performing a citizen's arrest or whatever, like helping out in a sense. Like, he's not breaking any laws, so they can't arrest him. And then they'd be like, you're right, though, kid, you're right. Just stay safe. And yeah, so I definitely could see him being a vigilante and being, like, smart about it, like, if he was quirkless. And being like, you can't arrest me. I done nothing wrong. I didn't break the law. And they'd be like, you know what? You're right. Dang it, kid. You're smart. Even more reason to, like, bring him on as a hero, but I digress. But yeah, I think that's essentially it for like what if Izuku remained quirkless. I just feel like the message in itself would have been so much stronger. Like, the you can be a hero too would have made so much sense if he didn't have a quirk, because it's like you literally are saying like he can be a hero too, but he had to have that, like he had to get a quirk in order to be a hero. But it's like there are so many examples of like being able to fight and be a hero without having a quirk. Or you could have a quirk that maybe doesn't always help out. And also too, like, he doesn't have to be like a primetime hero. Like underground heroes exist. There's also too just like rescue type heroes, or like Recovery Girl. I'm sure she's not like or back in her prime wasn't a primetime hero. Like, she was more along the rescue team, the recovery team. Like, they need heroes in all aspects of the hero work. So he would definitely like could be of help in those other moments. Now, how he would fare in the provisional license exam like tests as a quirkless hero, I'm sure he would have had proper training by then to like be able to do all that, but I don't know how that would have worked out. But I would be rooting for him regardless. But yeah. So I think that's basically it for this episode. It's not as long as the past two have been, and I apologize for that. But there's only so much I can talk about on this topic of Izuku being quirkless. So, yeah. Let me know what you guys think. Would you have preferred it if he remained quirkless, or do you like the story where it's at now? Also, this is something I would read, honestly. I would love to have like a spin-off of like a quirkless Izuku, like what if scenario. And yeah, I don't know. I'm curious what other people are think. Like, do you think it would have been so much more impactful? Granted, I know that's probably not even why people watch this show, but like, I don't know. When I'm invested in something, I think beyond just the basic, like, oh, this is fun and entertaining and, like, cool, like, superpowers stuff or whatever. I'm like, the message, the story, the detail. But also, too, I'm like, I literally majored in narrative filmmaking. So I'm like, I like things like that. Like, I'm also kind of trained into like looking into the deeper detail and like the storytelling elements there, which Horikoshi does so well, and I will talk about that in a later episode. But yes, I'd like to, I don't know, question things when I like the media I watch, and how like what if it was different, or how it could be different, so I'm curious to see what other people think about that. And yeah, so if you like this episode, don't forget to give it a like, and let me know what you think. in the comments below. And if you are looking forward to any more episodes, I have plenty of ideas. I can talk about My Hero Academia and all sorts of elements for hours, if you couldn't tell. But I can't tell you what the next week's episode is going to be about. And I probably won't record that for a while. I think I'll record that when I'm back from dealing with what I got to do. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm also open to like ideas for podcast episodes, but yeah, so I will see you guys next week, hopefully, as I'm trying to make this weekly. But yeah, don't forget to subscribe to not miss out on future episodes. And if you haven't seen the past episodes, there's 3 of them. This is the 4th one. You can check out my playlist on my channel, which is FGFO Podcast, because Fangirl Freaks Out. But yeah, so that's all for this week. See you next time. Peace.